Anyways, my brain ain't working. I didn't finish my coffee yet.
I'm right there with you, trying to get charged up.
All right, cool. Let me double check that it's live over on LinkedIn. Hi, Boyne. Is this not working? What's it doing? What the heck? Sorry. Trying to understand. It says it's live streaming on LinkedIn, but I'm not seeing the live stream active. Okay, there it is. All right, cool.
Nice.
Welcome, people. We'll get started in just one moment. I see people joining on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitch. Thank you for being here. Before Craig introduces himself, please use the text chat to post any questions that you have for Craig or share what you're working on. I'll relay those to Craig so you can get advice, feedback, insights, and we have a fun conversation. Those of you on Start Motto, where we're hosting this, Boyne, raise your hand. Let us know in chat if you'd like to jump on stage to ask questions. And with that, Craig, introduce yourself, please.
Sure. I'm Craig Silverstein. I've been super interested in both startups and businesses and business operations for a couple decades now. But I initially started out helping startups kind of ramp up, especially when founders were looking to exit and either get acquired or were looking for funding rounds. So I joined a couple tech companies several years back. One of them was SyncSketch, which is a collaborative tool online that is for animators, graphic designers, game creative departments in game creation, character creation, and environments. And in joining that company, they had really good values, a really good message, and I was like, you know what? They wanted to bring me in house and go through an acquisition, and I helped guide them to a Unity acquisition, which was pretty big at the time, and that was back in 2021. And through that, I joined Unity in house, which was a little bit of a fun roller coaster for a little while, and then oversaw a couple of acquisitions that they had in terms of the business operations, looked at their revenue, how they could either integrate the companies or scale them up so that they could get the value that they expected from the acquisitions as well. And after that, I spun off, wanted to go back into consulting and realized there's huge opportunities, not just in consulting, but in business intelligence, in networks, in connecting companies and really bringing them to the value that suits their needs and is really going to help smaller companies scale better, more efficiently, and faster. So one of the things that I've been working on with the Next Unicorn, which is my company that primarily leverages AI solutions to deliver intelligence and either to acquirers or people who are looking to scale their companies through growth stages. So the that whole organization is run through proprietary AI systems that help bring the value to companies that they're looking for. So that's a little bit about me and the adventure that I've been on so far.
I love it. I love, yeah, so many you mentors that have been helping out in the community have such rich backgrounds and different, like, diverse experiences to pull from. And we already got a fun question from Jorge. I'm going to post it in the chat over here on Start Motto, but I'll read it to you for everyone. So Jorge says, I'm working on a call tracking conversation intelligence MVP. I am currently looking to work with call centers to help them understand their calls at scale and be able to coach, onboard new talent, and do ongoing training based on real, valuable internal data. Craig, do you have any insights to share, especially in regards to the the tracking and usage of data?
So, yeah, that's a very broad question. Feel free to follow up with more specific questions as I start talking. But I think that organizing data and allowing companies to use it in more valuable ways is a sweet spot. So I think you're targeting something that is a very high value, because what we're currently seeing with large language models, and as AI systems develop, and as data itself expands and becomes this giant ocean, it's not really whether people can get their hands on data or whether companies can get their hands on data. I'm very much a huge believer right now that there is very little such thing as proprietary data at this point. Either the data is attainable, or it can be modeled in ways, or assumptions can be crafted in ways where you can get the data or get at least a snapshot of what could be. And I think AI in general is helping us also help determine what could be in terms of simulations and modeling things out at a more rapid pace. Not necessarily guaranteeing 100% accuracy, depending on how people incorporate that data into their frameworks. And it's really the frameworks driving a lot of the processes there. But I think that taking that data and being able to focus on what's important, what's been validated and vetted, and being able to incorporate it into frameworks. And I think education's huge. I think onboarding jobs is huge. My company has a division that we're starting to look at for things like onboarding and things like that with companies, because that's a huge part. A lot of companies say that their workforces are their talent is the most valuable asset they have, which I strongly believe, because without that, there's there's a huge impact. And you can see right now companies are paying massive amounts of bonuses and money and salaries to people that they find super valuable. Facebook was, I saw something the other day where they were offering like $250 million for like AI developers at certain ranges. And it's like that's used to be unheard of. But I think the sentiment has always been there that workforces are the most valuable component to things. And a lot of people feel like AI is taking away from that currently. And there may be aspects that it is, but on the flip side, it's also increasing the value of individuals who know how to leverage it or who are participating in it in certain ways. So it's an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of fun comments I'd like to throw out about that, but I'll stay on topic because Jorge did add a little bit more, and I posted in the chat. And yeah, those are incredible insights for sure. And Jorge, I hope you're digging in with the other people that are listening along. But the additional comments is this is meant to be viewed by call center owners, and the CTA, the call to action, is for them to book a meeting with me so I can explain everything in more detail. And he's got a landing page that he's shared. Check that out so everyone can like share it. I'll post it in like all the chats. So if anyone else has feedback, insights, to share, feel free, advice. But yeah, I think it's cool. Let me see, real. We got another question from Jose, or a new question from Jose. How do you adapt a go-to-market strategy when your offering is expertise rather than a tangible product? That's kind of interesting.
That is a that's both a loaded question, because there's a lot that goes into that. If you want to think about, let's go back to saying frameworks drive everything, which I was saying earlier. I feel like every office hours has a little bit of a theme. This one I feel like is leaning slightly towards the value of frameworks. So go to market strategy really depends on a few things. The first is who your customers are and really understanding what their day to day is like and what their problems are. And then the second part of that is the value proposition of what you're providing them. So if you're providing something that's either more of a professional service or something that's of insight, you have to look at how they're absorbing that service and how they expect it to be monetized and what the most effective way of monetizing it actually is, and then what the most lucrative way to monetize it actually is. And probably in that order, you're going to look at first, how are companies currently monetizing this particular service? So if it's intelligence and it's more of a professional consulting kind of type of service, uh, that in general, a lot of professional services are either monetized by projects or monetized by hours. I always shift more towards project monetization rather than hourly, because you get stuck in that kind of wheel of like, okay, I'm just charging by the hour, and it's very hard to shift out of that unless you do um, kind of more subtle changes. Project pricing, every new project you bring on, you're able to price it a little differently. And that can look at what your general service is and kind of classify things as kind of like add-ons to your intelligence program. And that's one of the big things that I had to look at as I started my consulting company is, how do I kind of productize a professional service? What does it look like? How do I transform it into something where, instead of that mold of like hourly consulting rates or even project consulting rates, it's more customizable. And if you go onto my website, thenextunicornllc.com, you can kind of see, I don't have our monetization there. I purposely, because of questions like this coming up, where I want flexibility in looking at what a client's looking for and being able to match the value of what they're looking for, and then figuring out how much it should cost from there. But we do that through our leveled intelligence system for Minerva Engine, which is our kind of like flagship system that drives most of our data and operations and intelligence for companies. That is all done through depth of intelligence or actionability of intelligence that we're providing. So we took what was an hourly consulting model and transformed it into a productized, how deep and actionable do you want your intelligence based on what your goals are, how you operate, and the value you're actually looking for. So it's looking at the monetization part is part of go to market, but then also figuring out the real flywheel of the go to market strategy. And that, but by flywheel, I mean all of the different components that end up pushing your customers to you. And then those customers that are pushed to you increase value, not only through one project, but they might be connected to another network of customers that are also being incorporated into your go to market strategy. That's why I think one of the most valuable things any new product can do is not focus just on their customer, which is huge. You have to kind of, they say, voice of the customer is one of the main things for figuring out, especially an effective MVP, but also the networks your customers belong to, who they talk to, why they talk to them, how they talk to them, where they talk to them. Look at the whole communication setup of the way your customers interact. And that will also add a lot of value to your go to market strategy as well.
I think that's, yeah, again, super helpful, and it's interesting to hear your approach to thinking strategically about how, this first step should lead to this next step, right? And being cognizant of that, and trying to do the research and awareness of, yeah, not just like where these people are and who they're connected to, but really important, the way they communicate, essentially establishing what their culture is. So, when you're thinking about your MVP, your go-to-market strategy, and targeting the right people, and essentially convincing them to check it out and hopefully give you money, you're doing that in a way that feels relatable and personalized. Especially, again, like this comes up all the time, there's so much slop out there. slop just overwhelming everyone's lives, from social media to inboxes to everything, right? And so the more you take the time to do the research and talk to these people, the customers, and understand, their culture, their values, the way they interact with people, and what makes them excited and invest into things, it's going to make them feel like you care more. It's going to come across far more authentic and stand out from all the slop, because you're doing the opposite of slop, ideally. So yeah, really, really good insights and sharing for that. Especially love how you kind of went into like a methodology for that too. And yeah, we got people joining from other places. Welcome. Remember, use the text chat to ask any questions. Share what you're working on. I'll relay those to Craig so you can get some answers, feedback, insights, or we can just have a conversation about what's going on. Welcome, William. Welcome new people to LinkedIn and Twitch and YouTube. Craig, building on this, some people in here, they might be, a little bit later stage in their careers while they want to be entrepreneurs. And, it's part of like what my strategy is, what I'm trying to do. I'm working on this is I want to, yeah, do more consulting. So I'd love to hear, you kind of touched on it, but like bring this idea of productizing yourself as a service. How do you leverage that, as the in between of being a consultant? How do you first, like establish yourself to let people know that you're available as a consultant and start making those inroads to build up a clientele?
Yeah. One of the big things. So I'd say a lot of people go to events, whether they're like conferences or different roundtables and even different groups like an 805 startups group, things like that. A lot of people go to those specifically looking for clients. And I'd say that's kind of the wrong mindset. I know companies can go to these different events. GDC, the Game Developers Conference, was one I was going to quite a lot, and also DealMax, which is a event for investors, and Uncorrelated is another awesome group that does a lot of investor kind of private equity and alternative investment kind of events. And as a consultant, I'm not going there just looking for clients. When I go to those events, I'm really looking for a few things. One is understanding the culture of the industry that I'm catering to, and understanding how they network, what they value in relationships, and what really drives what's important to them, and how they react to different events happening in the industry and the evolution of their industry based on what I hear, what I see, different speakers at these events. And I kind of absorb it all with a very kind of curious, open mindset, not looking for clients, but looking, where are my clients? And goes back to that framework. Where are they? How are they communicating? What's important to them? What's their culture? And in doing that, and just introducing myself, learning about people, they start to open up to you. And you realize if they are not necessarily a potential client themselves, they have networks. And I've heard this term thrown around a lot, which is somebody's net worth is actually based on their network. And I think it's super, super important for especially founders, and both early stage and late stage, because even late stage founders will learn a tremendous amount, um, just year over year, how things are evolving, what's important to different things, whether it's the tech landscape and how that's changing year to year. But I'd say get out there, go to events, and meet people in person, because it's not just about the people and the clients. It's about getting in, becoming one of them, so that when you start to look at them as clients or monetization, things like that, you end up having a stronger network. You have referrals at that point, you have trust building up, and it doesn't all happen overnight. And that's why I think companies that are just looking for, they go into these events with a biz dev mindset where like, okay, I'm going to close some clients this conference. That'll never work. I've never, I mean, it will, especially like some companies that are there specifically to like close deals. Like I get that that's a thing, and it can be effective, but most of the time from early to mid-market companies, I hear, yeah, we don't do a lot of conferences because they're not high value. There's not a big ROI for it, where it's really hard to get that ROI. And if you're looking just to close clients, it probably would be hard at those events. So events is one. It could be any type of event, just where your customers are, understanding that base, but also don't stop getting in touch with people in a more personalized manner. The repetition is a numbers game. So if you send out 20,000 emails, you'll probably get a couple back for sure. And that is like fishing in the ocean, except the ocean is probably easier to catch fish than those email marketing campaigns sometimes. Not that they're not valuable, but as a founder, what you're really looking to do is get your product or your service in the hands of people that want to give you feedback on it. That's one of the most important things. So a lot of the initial business development aspects of a company should be actually asking for feedback or trying to evolve a partnership rather than onboard a client. I think that's one of the most valuable approaches for a lot of companies.
No, yeah, I agree. Like one of the things like I've been doing for a long time now is explaining and pushing the value of your relationships, and especially building authentic relationships instead of being transactional. And like your examples kind of highlight the differences, like, you know, the person going to the conference to close deals is being very transactional versus the person going to an event to be a resource and learn about people and essentially be a good neighbor in the community. That is how you establish your personal brand, the brand for your company that you represent, and really give people a sample of what it's like to work with you and be around you and kind of, you know, vet you and see if like, you know, one, is it enjoyable to be around this person? Would it be enjoyable to work with them? But then also, is this someone I want to support, right? And if you endear yourself to others in the community because you're a good community member, you'll see people around you want to see you succeed. They'll want to help you. And like you kind of, you know, touched on, they might not be a good fit as a customer, but they know people who are, and they'll put themselves in a position to introduce you or at least guide you to those people. Be like, hey, you should talk to them, right? So simple
Yeah.
things like this, and it starts there. And yeah, like everyone has a personal brand, whether they like it or not, and you don't have to refer to it as your personal brand, but that's how you build any relationship with family members, with friends, with business partners, people in the community, in any aspect. So really good insights, really good advice and examples given too. Um, Joshua shares a bunch of fun stuff what they're working on. Posted in chat. So Joshua's working on a healthcare app currently at 80% done. The product is based on AI diagnostic system coupled with a live doctor consultation. As a patient, you get diagnosed by our AI using one of the best AI diagnostic systems, and also drugs are prescribed to you. Also, when you need to consult with a doctor, we match our patients with a live doctor in your location. Sounds interesting. Craig, do you have any insight? I mean, you got a lot of, you know, experience with the AI now, but any insight related to like the industry too? Any heads up kind of things to be aware of or thoughts?
Um, a couple of thoughts. I think I love the biotech medical device technology industry, because it really seeks to do one thing is make it convenient to be healthy. I think that's one of the coolest things for a company to offer the world. So congrats, Joshua, for prioritizing that. That's super cool. Um, I do have caution. I have a couple cautionary tales. One happened last night where there was a spider on my wall, and I have very few fears. One happens to be spiders. That's probably relatively common. But of course, my first thing to do is like figure out, okay, what kind of spider is this? Because this is huge. So I take a snapshot of it, and I just throw it in a chat GPT and it's like, yeah, this isn't a spider, it's a centipede. And I'm like, no, no, it's definitely not a centipede. So hopefully your app can diagnose a little bit better than the spider centipede mix up. But as I got deeper and deeper into what it is, I was getting some pretty crazy spiders. I think ChatGPT at the time wanted entertainment factor rather than what it actually is, because it was boring. It was like some kind of house spider or something like that. That was super common, but they just look scary. But I think there's a couple lessons with the app, and accuracy is going to probably be one of the biggest hurdles because you're trusting a diagnosis on something that people are not yet, but definitely probably one day will be much more comfortable with as it continues to evolve. And um, as the ways, and like I said, frameworks is probably going to be a huge theme. Really, it's how good are the frameworks that are guiding your AI system to track accuracy and make accurate diagnosis as possible. I think is probably something that you're concentrating fairly hard on. But another instance that I think kind of raises a lot of flags for some people, I'm going with flags first. So I'm not just being like, hey, let me tear apart this app because I love what you're doing. Um, Zillow a couple of months ago tried a thing where they were going to let AI act as a broker, like an actual kind of flipping houses, doing their own thing with real estate. And that's not really Zillow's lane. Typically, they would just show housing, let people list prices, do their thing, do their own little Zillow estimate, maybe is like the biggest they would influence what the sale and the brokerage kind of thing was. But that was their thing, was just being a platform. Now, when they let AI, and there's really interesting articles, so I suggest you go out and take a look, but they were letting an AI agent kind of go nuts, run off on its own, and create this housing agency, buy, sell, do its thing. And it created like a mini housing bubble that collapsed in the region where they tested it. So people were furious. I think they lost a couple $100 million because of the damage it did. And it created this little mini catastrophe in the area that they tested it. And that's one thing you want to look at is um, confirmation biases from yourself and also AI itself, the systems you're running on. So lots and lots of testing are important. And I think the biotech industry, whether it's pharmaceuticals or software or devices, that's kind of one of the things that are inherent in those industries is lots of testing. I mean, some drugs that are in development take a decade to actually from their first phase of trials to their kind of preparing for go to market, and FDA approval could take so long. But I think all things said, there's a lot of great things happening with that type of strategy and that type of product for the market itself in both technology. Agriculture is doing very similar things, kind of diagnosing um, different products for different types of um, crops that are being grown, and a more effective way to put the amount of chemicals, for by chemicals I mean the insecticides, pesticides, whatever they're putting on the crops, different ways to manage all that stuff. And that's a very similar thing because it's a more of a diagnosis kind of use case for AI. And I think that's evolving, getting more and more accurate. So I think fear of the product first is going to be one of the biggest challenges coming up. Just the idea that humans can diagnose better, whether they can or can't. I'm sure there are things that the average human, even the average doctor, especially eventually, won't be able to diagnose as well as certain AI systems. Um, I think one thing that I saw, and I don't know 100% how true it is or not, there was a X-ray. I think it was like a mammogram, maybe. So not really an X-ray, but whatever it was shown. And AI picked up on a spec that's like, this could probably evolve into cancer in the next 10 years. And doctors had no idea that spec was even like, it looked like every other spec on the thing. But when they checked it out, it's like, okay, actually, yeah, that would develop into cancer. So it's interesting how AI can diagnose these things. So I think looking at where people's headspace is going to be super important. Of course, staying ahead of the other products that are out there, because it's going to be a hot space soon. It already is really a hot space that's been developed. So keep at it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, touching on that last point, like we've got a couple other mentors, like my personal mentor, Yaron Gorin. He started a telehealth uh, uh, application a long time ago. Since then, it's evolved a couple different ways. I don't know if they got like partially acquired by Amazon or not to do back end. The technology evolved to be more of a back end solution used by other services. But yeah, definitely take the time to research what's going on in the market, because it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Craig, with understanding who these people are, how they how do they congregate, who they spend time with, what their culture is, and how you can resonate with them and distinct or make yourself distinct from the others in the marketplace from an experiential point of view. What is the unique experience that they're going to have with your brand, your company, your product, your service that's going to bring a different type of enjoyment, the enjoyment they're looking for, while providing with the same benefits, either easier access to those same benefits that the others in the marketplace are offering, or more benefits, right? Um, so yeah, definitely take the time to get real honed in on that, and that's going to be part of your story, your persuasive story with your landing page, your pitch for your product, and also the way you position yourself with the investors and highlight how you are different. So yeah, really really great insights.
To expand on that, just briefly, from that kind of strategic perspective, companies, when they brand themselves and they bring their products to market, they really do have to think about a few things. And it actually starts when you're building your MVP. You start to choose, what is our company going to be known for? Is it going to be known for speed? Typically, companies that are super fast at something will potentially sacrifice something else. They might sacrifice cost, they might sacrifice quality. And that's kind of that pyramid of like, I think it's based in project management principles, where it's like you have scope, you have cost, you have time, and you have quality. I think those four things, those four dimensions. And as you start to focus on one, you kind of give up a little bit of other. And there are things that change that model, kind of flip it on its head and make it a little more or less relevant today than it used to be. Like AI actually speeds things up. It can increase quality. The scope could be all as deep or as broad or as narrow as you want with certain tools now. And it's almost like that Swiss Army knife. I always used to tell companies, don't be a Swiss Army knife, because people aren't going to know what to buy, what you're selling them. Focus more on a very concentrated, super high focus value proposition that people will get right away. They'll want to buy it if they have that problem. They'll want to at least test it, check it out. It's easier to market. It's cheaper to market. It's easier to sell. And now with things like ChatGPT, that's a Swiss Army knife. People can go to ChatGPT for anything. Same thing with Perplexity. Same thing with those Claude models. So it goes out there where like, okay, AI is kind of changing this a little bit in terms of what people expect, but that is specific to AI itself, has become this, we can be a Swiss Army knife and work kind of thing. But looking at all those different aspects of your branding and of your product and what you're delivering, it's going to affect so much of your company. Like I just said, the marketing, the product itself, how you talk to your customers, what your customers want, everything. So look at that. And even in that diagnostic app for doctors and the consultations, it's going to be important of what separates you first from the traditional method. Real doctors going in, not having to necessarily do certain things for a regular checkup that you used to have to go into a doctor for. And that's the easy part. The hard part is once all these other apps start propping up that do that, and you're going to be like, okay, well, now we need to figure out what makes us different than all of those guys. And you don't have to babysit your competition, but you have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, I love that last bit too, where yeah, it's detrimental to be babysitting and hyper focused on competition and everything that they're doing. It's a distraction in a lot of cases, and in my experience, seeing other founders being part of like teams, being a mentor, what that usually leads to is paranoia and reactionary decision making, where oh, they're doing that, we got to do this now. And it's like, no, you don't need to do that at all, probably, because your intended customers that you're after probably don't care about that. Because they're, the experience that you're providing, the way that you're doing it, the benefits that you're offering are appealing to this very specific type of person, like you touched on, and not to all these other people that fall outside of that scope who the competition's after. So you're actually after different people in the the larger marketplace. You don't need to worry about that shit. But like you said, Craig, it's really important to understand who you are, what you're trying to accomplish, why. And that's why I often talk about, guiding principles and making sure you do that before really like anything else. Start building like, your MVP or anything, your service idea. Have your mission statement, have your value statement, have your culture statement. Something that I take from Tony Hsieh and Zappos is have an experiential statement. What's the overarching experience you want people to have with your brand at any touch point, whether they're coming into your office or interviewing for a job, buying something from your website, anything. And with Zappos, it was delivering happiness. At every point, we want people to feel happy for interacting with us. So, like, mission, values, culture, experiential statement, these things serve as like a compass. Anytime you're coming up with an idea, a strategy, a plan, and then taking an action, if you're not in alignment with those core guiding principles that represent you and your company, then you're probably doing something that is diminishing the value of your brand or alienating the people that you're trying to appeal to because they're now a misalignment. So yeah, I think this is all wonderful advice, and we got some more fun questions or shares actually. I posted in the chat over here on Startmata. Kiss My Lou over on Twitch says, I co-own a dog shampoo brand, and I'm working on a new CRM for pet businesses, specifically pet groomers. Do you have any insights or thoughts about that, Craig?
That's awesome. CRMs are it's one of those things where people find faults with them so easily, and everyone that can be simple and catered to a specific audience, which it sounds like is probably you realized people hate CRM, so I'm going to make one specific for dog groomers. I think it's important. I've worked with Salesforce, HubSpot, Freshworks, all these different CRM platforms, and a lot of them are clunky. A lot of them seem like they wanted to simplify it, and I mean that's what HubSpot's big thing. And I think they were geniuses at marketing a kind of simplified, user-friendly platform, and they definitely market it very well for smaller stage companies. But I think it's an interesting concept, and it's kind of again one of those things where know your audience, know where they hang out, know how you're going to connect with them, and what data and info for them is most important to collect and to bring into this CRM. I haven't actually experienced too much of like an industry specific CRM. Like HubSpot's general, any type of company can use it. So I think this is really interesting. Is there a particular reason why you're kind of moving to, okay, these other companies, like what problems are these other CRMs not able to solve on their own that you're bringing to the table for dog owners. I'm curious about that, because that's the integrity of that component to it is really what where the value proposition, I think, is going to be embedded with this platform that you're building.
Yeah, I'd love to hear those details, that additional context, Kiss My Lou. And then, yeah, once you post that in the chat, I'll share that with Craig. Um, while we wait to get that additional information, Craig, touching on this theme, so Kiss My Lou said that they are a co-owner in a dog shampoo brand. So they're coming from industry insider kind of angle.
Mm-hmm.
They're building this product, likely partially for themselves, probably because they've already seen this kind of play out with other clients that they work with, selling their product to dog groomers. What kind of traps do you see founders fall into, or maybe you've fallen into, or, because you've done this a lot yourself, where you're creating something as a response to a personal experience you had, where you're like, oh, this sucks, I'm going to make something better. And you start with yourself as the first customer, because it's coming from your own experience. What sort of traps have you seen or experienced where you are building for yourself too much instead of the kind of wider market that you're going to need to follow or go after?
Yeah. That's a really great question. For myself personally, I've seen both sides of how this impacts companies and products and people's kind of journey on trying to become what I'd call an industry standard. It's really tough to become an industry standard at something unless you can get past beyond that kind of self bias and self perspective in something. But sometimes there's complete validity in that kind of unique perspective as an industry insider solving your own problems. I think some of the best products that have been created are from founders who were tired of not having an easier way to do something or a solution to a very specific problem they had. When I was working with SyncSketch, when I first teamed up with them, that was created. Their CEO was doing animation. I think he was teaching like animation classes or something like that. And he wanted an easier way to do reviews, whether remotely or in person, where somebody can give feedback on very detailed animated content. And by content, I'm meaning like AAA studio grade game characters and things like that that are 3D models, super intense, super elaborate. So in looking at these types of reviews, he was like, okay, has to be user friendly, has to have all the tools that real artists want. We're not talking about the tools from like Microsoft Paint from 1996. We're talking about like real legit tools for 3D kind of work and content. And building that into it, he was solving a unique problem that he had as trying to give feedback to people. And there just wasn't a solution there for it. Even sitting over somebody's shoulder, trying to explain something on a computer screen is not as valuable as what companies have done and AAA studios have done with SyncSketch. So this is one of the things where he was solving a problem for himself, but when it was tested was at this critical moment when COVID-19 happened. Studios were forced to onboard remote collaborative solutions in order to keep things running in these very expensive high-end studios. And where a company finds that they have true product market fit and where they figured out that their product has gone not just beyond their own personal needs, but to every person in the industry's kind of personal needs to get over obstacles that this solution is solving. One of the things that studios told SyncSketch was after people were going back to the office, they were still using SyncSketch. It wasn't just a remote solution. It was an everyday solution because the feedback that SyncSketch could offer was just more valuable than when they didn't have it. And that's the type of solution where you need to look for that. Like you need to go beyond just solving a problem and make it, how do I solve this problem every day for everybody that actually has this problem? And it's easier to do that when it's industry specific. That industry specific is, and not always, I mean, industries can be broader. That's kind of the scope aspect to it. The broader it is, the larger the scope, the harder it is to market. Not that that's wrong. It's just, it's harder to market something that has more uses and that applies to more industries. It's also more expensive because your messaging, you need more messaging. You need that messaging targeted to the right people. So one of the things I tell a lot of companies is, don't start marketing until you have figured out your customer, your product market fit, in terms of, get lots of feedback first. Feedback is just as important as clients full time. And that's one thing I started with. So for myself, building my own consultancy, I ran into a problem where I was solving a problem that I had at companies that I worked with when I started productizing business intelligence. And I realized that my scope was too broad. I'm not figuring out, okay, what specific customer base is this product most useful for? Is it private equity firms? Is it corporate development teams that are going through M&A and acquisitions and kind of sorting through that stuff, and figuring out the value proposition that I'm offering, and making it concise. And instead of branding myself as this magically amazing business intelligence tool for people who are looking to learn more about companies or grow their own, what I figured out was that that's just, it's too much, where it's kind of like boiling the ocean, right? So if people don't feel like what you have directly applies to them and is rather just a little bit helping too many different things, it's really tough to sell something like that. So I started getting more and more feedback. I started talking to different companies about where the high level value in a system like we had is. And I mean, it's still an ongoing process, but it's really looking at, okay, where is the highest value point in a customer's journey, and how many customers have it, who has it, and really look into how you're solving for it.
No, yeah, I again, brilliant insights, very helpful. It touches on two things. One, Irina Kukieva, who's a frequent mentor as well. She had a similar experience when she was doing consulting with VCs and everything, and helping with due diligence on the data side. And it was one of these little things where she realized that she too was being a little bit too broad, and the way that she was presenting herself wasn't effectively communicating how specialized she was at this very specific area that is a need for, people doing these due diligence with AI companies, data companies. And it's something that also reminds me of my early days as a professional photographer. I learned in like high school and college that the most lucrative way to build a career as a photographer isn't to have a portfolio where your website shows you as an architecture photographer, a portrait photographer, a concert photographer, etc., all together, because you aren't demonstrating you're a specialist in any one thing by having all these different portfolios. And yeah, each portfolio may show that you can do those very well, but it's making it harder for someone to look at you and be like, oh, this person's a specialist in concert photography, right? So the more effective way is to separate all those portfolios into their own, websites, where it's like, here I am, the specialist at concert photography, and I only send that to the, potential clients that need that. And then here's my other website that's designed specifically for, portraits. and I send that only to potential portrait clients. And now anytime they're interacting with my work and me and my brand, they go, oh, specialist at that, great. That's worth a premium. That's building trust. I can believe in their ability to do that because they are specialists, right? So it's really like interesting, and being able to like call these very long forgotten experiences in my other life as a professional photographer, and be like, oh yeah, that's just good marketing, that's good sales, it's good positioning and communication and targeting and all that stuff. So it's really, yeah, fun to hear you share that. Related to that though, Jorge asks, what do you suggest about my outreach strategy? I plan on reaching out to call center owners with a cold call pitch to see if they want to hop on a call with me, and I plan on dropping a link to the website, which has an interactive mock up, to see if they want to learn more. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on this, especially as someone much more popular than I am that probably gets a lot more messages hitting their inboxes, email, DMs, whatever it is. So yeah, what do you think about this strategy?
Yeah, there's definitely, like, this is the, I think, most common strategy right now, just by the sheer number of outreach that I get to my LinkedIn inbox and also email as well, where there's a massive amount of activity. Very few actually pierce the barrier that I put up to engage with customers, where I actually click into an email or into a link. So I'd say if you do go that route, you definitely need something unique, and there's not a huge amount of flexibility in where you can put it, because it's either going to be in the subject line or it's going to be in the body of the email where you give me something amazing. I think the last sales email for like actual just a biz dev, it came from a CEO of a company. So where it's coming from matters a little bit. But also, I think it was for revamping websites, and they actually had like a Loom video of part of like my website remodeled. I think I've remodeled it myself several times since that video. I didn't review the whole video, but I was like, okay, that's cool. They did something a little different where they actually provided part of their service to me without me having to do anything. Like, they just, here is a sample, here's our freemium model. And that's part of productizing something, is where you just gave me your freemium service, and the next time, if I like it enough where I want to engage, the next time I know I'm engaging for a paid consultation or paid service or paid product at that point. So I think looking at things like that are important. I think that strategy, and I'm not saying it's a bad strategy to do that kind of mass outreach, because that's why there's, the systems are doing so well that have those setups, and every company does email marketing, LinkedIn messaging, because there is it's a numbers game. There is a success rate, and there's a methodical way to do it and get it right. Um, I think cold calls are really interesting when done right, because they're highly effective if you get someone on the line. So one example is, I was attending an event, and this is actually a great strategy if you're going to events, or if you can get your hands on a list of attendees to an event. If you do a cold call instead of just a cold email, and the person actually picks up the phone, I think there's a barrier these days that any email, or any phone number rather, that's not saved in your phone is spam. So people will just not answer it unless it's like their business phone, where they start picking up calls that they don't know because they're potential customers, or attached to customers. But one of the things is, if you get your hands on a list to an event and people are going to that event, and you cold call and say, hey, I saw you're going to such and such event, I'm going to be there, would you like to schedule some time? Someone's much more likely to schedule time with you if you're on a call with them in real time, rather than just an email where they can just ignore it. they don't even have to talk to you or answer you. So that's one way to do it. And if you're not going to the event and you have a list, you call them up and say, hey, I saw you're going to XYZ event. We're going to try to make it, but I was curious if you'd like to hop on a quick call before the event to go over a couple things. I think like you're basically, don't even say you're a dream customer, but kind of find you're in that works that has that high conversion rate, and get in that way. And it could just be establishing, it could be asking for feedback. I think every conference I go to, my big thing is not like, hey, we have a great product for you as a client. It's, hey, we have an interesting product and we think you would be super valuable, like just checking out a couple things and offering some feedback because we're going to market in a couple months or we just went to market. I think that's a really valuable way for newer companies. But yeah, that's what do we have here? Some more feedback there. Dashboard. Oh, okay. So I was just looking at the message on the CRM for the dog show too. That's awesome. But yeah, I'd say that's my thing there. Is like email marketing. Every company is doing it. They should do it, but how do you make it stand out? And I saw that, Jorge, you do the videos and stuff, and it does, done right. It makes it personable. So good stuff.
Right on. Yeah, Jorge added a couple little things. Yeah, about using LinkedIn video message for that reason, and then yeah, they appreciate your thoughts, and they said that's an excellent idea. Definitely doing this. Heck yeah. And then yeah, so Kismalu added a few more like follow ups to the pet groomer CRM. Kismalu says, I could talk about why my CRM for pet groomers is better than generic CRM for 15 plus minutes, so I'll try to keep it short with a couple key points. Statistics dashboard based animals, breeds, 300 plus breeds management in the CRM, animal management for each client, dog owners, pricing duration adjustments for each services based on the characteristics of the animal, breed, weight, age, and more. So yeah, definitely very contextualized to dog breeders and everything like that. So yeah, if that sparked any extra additional stuff for you, Craig, feel free to drop it. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Smilu. And yes, I'm glad my shit talking against the Habs is appreciated too. Kismalu shared that they're French Canadian, so I was just talking some shit in the Twitch chat. Yeah, Craig, we're coming up on time. So if anyone has final questions, feel free to throw them our way. We'll try to get done as quickly as possible. Josh just dropped something, so do that, and we'll see how much time we have left with you, Craig, after you finish this up. So Josh says, what's your take on having an investor for my health tech app and giving them a nice percent of equity? I need an advice on getting investors because we are currently open and ready for pre-seed investors. So yeah, you got some experience on this. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And you can hit me up either later on after the call or next week if you want to talk more about this, Joshua. But so with apps and health tech stuff, if you need investors to continue or to finish or finalize, I'd say there are a couple of key things that you absolutely 100% need to leverage in getting an investor period, but also a healthy investment for what you're actually looking for and for what you're actually giving the investor as well in terms of equity. Um, One of the big things for pre-seed stage investment are the team, making sure that the people you have on your team, if it's just yourself, it's definitely a harder sell, but getting people to believe in you or potential customers or partnerships. And that goes back to how important it is to be networking. Again, your network is your net worth. That kind of perspective on making sure that the there's support behind you beyond this investor. The best way um, to show the investor that you have that support are either people on your team that have been through successful exits before, that have a good idea of what they're doing. They work for major companies in the industry who would potentially be clients in the future. So for health tech, let's say like you work with a company like Merck or GlaxoSmithKline or one of those larger companies. If you're doing something in pharmaceuticals, then you say, hey, we come from these particular companies. If you're doing health tech stuff, like Medtronic or one of those kinds of companies, saying like, yeah, we've worked there, we know it works, we've been part of these huge solutions that have come out, things like that. So that level of experience and intimacy with the industry itself is hugely important to investors, because it's a huge success factor. You're doing what you know, and investors like that. It helps mitigate risk. I think the other thing beyond the team itself, great advisors can be super important, because they are probably people that have had huge success in the past, who are devoting time to help your team out and steer you in the right direction. So I think that is important to have kind of that piece behind you. So on your slide deck, while you're pitching to investors, there's always that team slide that's highly important, advisors, any type of support that you have from successful people or people that matter. The other part of it, beyond the team itself, is people love to see something work before they read about something, or read about what you want to do, or hear about what you want to do, or understand your TAM or your specific needs for the market, or what your product, your go to market strategy. Before any of that stuff, if you show a prototype of something that works, and you just put it in front of their face and say like, here, try this, and you think about like going beyond that Shark Tank stage where people are pitching their ideas and stuff. Everyone on there has something that works. They're looking for an investment to either like do their go to market or whatever, but they all have something that's intriguing enough to put on television, to actually create an episode of something about their pitch. And that's really what you need to close an investment. So it could be something super simple, doesn't need to look fancy, but it needs to work. And that will go a much longer way than having ambitions and describing and writing in a couple of slides of something that you have. And that's probably one of the biggest advice I have for people that are at that pre-seed level. Beyond that, and that also helps with like the accelerator type of level as well, if you have something that works, or just a tiny piece of something. But it also helps applications to things like A16Z has an accelerator called Speedrun. I think they also have another one for a different format, but they that's just one. There's also, I mean, you have those. What are those? I don't know. There's a lot. I can actually send a list out. People post them online all the time with like the top 100 accelerators going on, and then also Gary is doing some cool incubator stuff as well. He's kicking up. So definitely another great person to talk to about getting through it. And the reason why accelerators are so valuable is that it teaches you a bunch of stuff that would be really expensive otherwise. I know like the clients that I work with typically aren't pre-seed stage level unless it's a product that I super believe in, because they it's expensive at that point to get that type of service and quality in there. But that's why accelerators exist, is like, hey, you're building something cool, you don't have the resources yet, but we will potentially, as an early investor, or percent equity, whatever, give you the tools and resources you need to actually start kicking things up and get more investor type of support.
Yeah, that's like all incredible advice. I will add just a couple things. First, on the pitch deck, like Craig's saying, if you can start your pitch deck off demonstrating essentially a day in the life of, I say this all the time, a day in the life of a person that you're trying to target as your customer, what it's like for them using the existing, services, solutions that are there, right? And how that's frustrating, how that's not giving them the benefits they're after, how that's alienating them from, again, a cultural standpoint. It's not. It doesn't feel like it's for them. It's not. It's not aligning with who they are, right? And then you contrast that with a day in the life of this same person now discovering your product, your service, and using it, and enjoying it, and getting the benefits of it, right? That makes it so easy for an investor that's learning about your product to clearly imagine themselves follow along and, again, feel that human connection, and not have to read a bunch of text and see all these crazy illustrations and charts and try to make sense of it all. It's like, oh, I know who it's for, I know how it impacts them in a positive way, that's creating value, and how it stands out from the others in the marketplace. This is great. And then you hit them with the rest of, like, the follow-up stuff, like Craig said, the market opportunity, the size, who your team is. All these things are building credibility to this. Now, going back to Craig, what you're saying with the prototype, if you don't yet have the product in the market and you don't have that going on, when it comes to fundraising, building relationships in an authentic way with investors, before you pitch them, seek them out as mentors. Be really, like, to the point about why you're contacting them, why you want to learn from them, how they're relevant to your journey of what you're trying to accomplish, and see if you can take them out to coffee, 20 minutes, so you can show them what you're working on and get some feedback, right? Or jump on a call for 20 minutes. Start with a very small ask and approaching them as a mentor without asking them to be a mentor. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You're able to vet the relationship, see if you are able to vibe with each other, connect with each other, feel good about working together, being in the same room together, and see if you're a good match to be in a long-term relationship together as business partners, investor and founder, right? So start there and leverage these things that you're doing to demonstrate your ability to get shit done, that you're being very strategic in who you're contacting and how you're approaching them, while also demonstrating the quality of your character, being a good person, being someone that's worth the time and effort. And when you're going about this in the opposite direction as being purely transactional, just doing pitch, 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 give me money, there's not a lot there to build on. It's really a yes or no. No, I'm not interested. I don't really know who you are, don't care about you. You're just another person trying to get money from me. Versus, oh, you make me feel empowered because of what I've done and what I can share with you, and I get to feel good about these experiences I've had by imparting these lessons to you. And now it's a different type of dynamic in a relationship that can go in a billion different ways, and you get to pitch the product, your team, your company, while also, again, demonstrating your ability to continuously get things done and really, show your aptitude and ability to face adversity and overcome it. So these are just a little bit of extra add-ons to think about and how to approach this fundraising and dealing with all this stuff. We got a couple other final little questions popping in. Hang on one second. Over on Twitch. All right, Craig, over here, Friendly Fire. Hey, Gary and Craig. We just locked in a safe for 300K. Congratulations. I have shown you my application landing page before. My question is, how do you balance your time being head down working on the product versus going out and shaking your ass around town in order to spread the word and potentially acquire investors? And then there's a link to it. Craig, what do you think about that without being too crude about it?
All right, I'm going to open this. I'm just checking out rivalries real fast.
And Josh, I'm sharing your extra feedback right now, or follow-ups.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This looks like a cool platform. So, that's a good question. Balancing time with these different things. I think one of the things is that as a founder or co-founder with the company, there really is never enough time to do everything. I don't think a lot of people realize how much, I mean, people say it all the time, and you hear people like Gary Vee on social media saying, like, yeah, nobody should work as hard as a founder because they're not, like, it's going to be impossible to get employees to work that hard or understand what they're going through. And I think it is true, but people don't really understand it until they experience it. And if you think it's tough starting up a company and balancing time, there are stages throughout a company where it gets equally as hard and continues that pace, if not even harder. If you're looking for an exit in the future, when you go through due diligence, you're going to feel that feeling again that you felt as you started your company, where everything feels like it's compressed and there's just not enough time to do everything. I think the first thing every person period should do, but especially founders, is create your not to do list. So look at all of the things that you're currently doing every single day and put as many of those things as you can on a not to do list. And there's different ways to create that not to do list. There's like the Eisenhower matrix, where you're saying, like, okay, something's not urgent and something is not impactful. Okay, let's put that on a not to do list. So if you look at, and there's a couple, you could just look up like Eisenhower matrix or time management kind of frameworks. So we're going back to that framework thing, but figure out what not to do first. I think that's super important, and you'll be able to free up some time, but then go by impact. And if you only concentrate on one aspect of your company, like if it's building the product and you neglect, let's say you neglect networking, or you neglect understanding your audience by going to events and things like that, I think what you need to do is balance out what impacts what are the dependencies in the company, and what's your critical path to get to where you need to go. And I'm using a lot of project management lingo here, like critical path, which is but that's what you're doing. That's time management. It's part of project management. So those are the things where it no longer becomes this founder skill until you can hire employees or bring people on board that can facilitate those tasks that you're now doing as a founder. And hopefully you get to that point, because there's a point where founders need to detach themselves from certain tasks and offload them onto people they hire. If you're in an area, be careful in California, but if you're in an area where you can have contractors do certain things just as time permits and as you need it, you can hire people to facilitate certain things that you shouldn't be doing, but those should be super high priority things at an early stage that you just don't have time for, that have to get done. But overall, take a project management approach to how you balance your time, because that is the most limited resource, even so more so than funding or money for certain companies. So be both picky about it, but also uh, don't be so mechanical about it that like you don't have any flexibility. As founders, you need flexibility as well, both when the tide changes and you need to do a pivot. Don't get tunnel vision in your schedule, only focusing on one specific aspect. Make sure you keep your head kind of above, out of the tunnel, and observe everything going on around you.
Really good insights. I also shared another mentor's LinkedIn information, Mike Williams. He has like his own version of a project management system that I'm a big fan of, that I've been using myself. It's like a streamlined version of Scrum, but it's more rooted in best practices for just human, behavior and healthy mentality, like psychology stuff. That if you spend time with a psychologist, it's one of like the first kind of things they start teaching you about healthy living and practices, being rooted in um, like celebrating your progress and tracking your progress, big and small. And the smallest little thing is still something worth celebrating and feeling good about, and taking time to be mindful and reflect on things. And so his system is very much like all rooted in all this fun stuff. um, Hang on real quick, got some chats. stuff. I added some more that Fredly added over in the Start Motto chat. Um, Kismaloo said, just ask the users what they want and make them most important first. All right, need to get back to working. Was nice to share. Thanks, Lou, for joining us and sharing for sure. But yeah, like, you know, Fredly, with a lot of this, you know, it's really about accepting that you only have so much time and effort to put into something. And there's always more, like Craig said, and being okay with that. But the other thing too to be aware of is that, kind of like again going on like Mike's philosophy and his project management system. Just focus on what you can do, even if it's 10 minutes a day. Just 10 minutes a day still adds up over time, and eventually, as you progress with all of this, you'll have more resources, you'll have more support, and all of that will free you up to do more, right? Because you're able to delegate or understand more about the strategy of what you're doing and be more efficient with it all, right? So one of the biggest traps in this regard is not beating yourself up, not being, frustrated or angry that you can't do more, that you're not doing more, or that there's so much more to be done. That's just the way it is. So hopefully that's helpful. And yeah, Fredly added, this is exactly my issue. I'm honestly way too head down building features that people may not even want. Need to learn that just because I'm not programming doesn't mean the time is not used properly in a different way. Really need to improve my product management skills. Yeah. Well, the good thing is, yeah, there's a lot of great resources like Craig touched on, like the 4 Dummies series, like Scrum for Dummies. That's what I read, and it was fantastic. Like, it seems like, a 4 Dummies book isn't going to be good, but it was very good at breaking down the methodology and making it relatable. Like, there's a lot of other, like, project management systems out there. So explore, because everyone's personality is different, and, sometimes it's about cobbling together something from different systems, and that's what works for you. That's what, essentially Mike did. So Joshua added, all of the advice are excellent. I'm on MVP stage. Can it be used for pitching to my investors? Currently, I'm the only one on my team. I definitely get team members. I'd love to be on live with you if you permit it. Yeah, next time I sent you a link so you know how to join us over on Start Mata. But yeah, final thoughts on this one, because we're way over time, Craig, and I really appreciate you. Yeah,
It's okay. Yeah, no,
kind of winging it with us. But yeah, what are your thoughts on how? I mean, obviously, me and Craig would tell you right off the bat, yes, using your MVP should definitely be part of your pitch and demonstrating you can execute, you can get stuff done. But what really matters with the MVP and using it, and you might not have an MVP because it doesn't sound like you do yet, right? Because you said you're 80% done, or is that someone else? No, that was you. 80% done. So your MVP, it's not an MVP yet because it's not in the market. It needs to be in the market with the actual people using it. But most importantly, the product, meaning in MVP, is that it's something that you're able to sell and generate revenue from. So you're not there yet. You have a prototype. So Craig's advice about using the prototype to demonstrate with people and let them see it and use it is going to go a long way. But once you're at the MVP stage, it's in the market, that's when you want to highlight your methodology to testing that product in the market and show the validation you have for your core assumptions, what you've learned from what you went wrong, and how you're using it to move forward with the revenue and stuff. Craig, other sorts of thoughts you may have with, using it as an MVP to showcase to investors to win them over?
Yeah, I think it's so. Yeah, like Gary, like you said, yes, it's always a good idea to have something that works, that gets the value proposition across to investors and really shows them that there's nothing that's going to stop you from achieving the vision that you have. I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to working with investors. And one question that I think you need to ask yourself is, or rather not ask yourself, but have the investor kind of feel is like, okay, if I don't invest in this team, what's going to stop them? will not having my investment actually stop that? And if you can show them during your discussion, your pitch, that you are unstoppable, and don't be like hard nosed about it, but be passionate about it, that like you are going to achieve this. um, it would be awesome if they will achieve it with you. I think that's a really big part of it, because it's really hard to not root for someone that is there. Like they know what they want. They have total clarity on where their target is. So they're going from point A to point B, and that point B feels so real already to that investor. That's what you need to make them see and feel and understand and want to be a part of. So I think that's really what having that prototype there does, is reinforce the fact that things are happening, they're in motion, they're being built, and it's about building it with someone that cares. So you also need to show the investor why you want them on board and why you think that they're great for you, and kind of connect the dots for them where they feel like, you know what? Yeah, I guess I really am that person for this company. I be a sucker not to really help drive this forward. So I think that's really what a good MVP or good prototype will do. And something that validates that even more is working with a company that you can kind of partner with, that's in your network. I have those in my network that have not only been super helpful offering feedback on prototypes, but also have been super valuable in becoming clients, bringing on other clients, being referrals for other clients, just the whole 9 yards when it comes to that. Is having those people test the product, and that will also help kind of that issue as well of um, I think it was someone else in the chat who said they were two heads down building features that nobody wants. It kind of helps that as well, having that partnership with someone that's using, reinforcing, and kind of loving this product or prototype that you've built, and getting their feedback and incorporating that into the pitch, because then you have a supporter that's almost like another team member in essence, saying, hey, I had a friend at, if it's, let's say, a health tech app, and you, let's say, know someone in a hospital somewhere or a doctor from somewhere who's just like working, testing out, giving some feedback. And I don't know like what the, if there's limitations for doctors just going ahead giving feedback on certain things like that. So you need to figure out your industry. But working with someone to get that initial reaction and feedback and saying like, you know what? You're building these features, but the most valuable thing for us is this feature. And getting that feedback, and different people in different parts of the industry and different specialties might all have their own priority one feature that they want you to build. So that's part of a whole nother process of product management, and being the visionary that you are and deserve to be of your product. Figuring that stuff out is important, because you will get feedback from people who are very confident and very large customers eventually that say, hey, we want this built. And if it's not part of where you're going with your product, it's okay to say no. Definitely evaluate the impact of it. But you can start with those types of relationships at the earliest stage. Get a company that you can partner with to help you test your stuff, and eventually become a future client once you rock stuff out. Definitely hook them up, because they're helping you out a lot by giving you feedback and stuff. But you're also helping them out by showing them what their future could look like by using your product as well.
Yeah, that's all wonderful advice. And the other thing too is you're building case studies to show investors, building case studies to show other customers and clients, and it's giving you more insight in regards to your own product, your own services, the workflows involved. And that too, like what Craig like called attention to, is that everyone's going to be using your product a little bit differently, a little bit unexpectedly from what you imagine and how you designed it. So these things are really important to pay attention to and learn. And yeah, like there is a whole other challenge, like Craig, was very good at pointing out in regards to certain clients, especially bigger ones, wanting to push for very specific things. And yeah, part of that challenge is understanding where it fits in your vision, in alignment with all your customers, and then prioritizing at the end of the day what is going to be the most lucrative for you at this stage, given your very limited resources and network and other time and energy and other things. What's going to make the most sense in a lean methodology framework? Lean methodology is all about how can you expend the fewest resources as quickly as possible to move forward and get the biggest return from that, because the idea is to keep you moving towards success while having as much resources available as can be to continue with the iterative cycle. And like I was doing a landing page review earlier, and someone was saying they felt shameful about where they are, looking at what they've done thus far and what they want it to be. And I was trying to explain it's not shameful because it's just part of the iterative cycle. You shouldn't feel shame about something not being as good as you want it to be, because you're in this process of learning how to do that. The only thing you should feel shame about is causing harm or taking on like risk that is unnecessary to yourself, to others. That's that is worthy of shame, because you hurt yourself, you hurt someone else. But simply learning and engaging in a process to know what to do, that's just, it's beautiful, it's part of it. So I love this, Craig, and adding to that, I think that's a great place to stop, because we're over. And again, you've been wonderful giving us a lot of your time. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with people? A little closing thing? Got anything you want to share with people?
Yeah, I think just before we close up, because it connects a couple of these concepts, one, building features that people might not want, one's that iterative cycle on what do we do, what should we do, how do we manage time, all these different things, and kind of bring it all together. And it's another framework, another cycle model. It's the plan, do, check, act cycle. That's part of Kaizen, I believe, which is a kind of, it goes along with that kind of Six Sigma or like lean management too, where, okay, you're planning something, you have your vision, you go out, you do it. Now, a lot of people just plan and do, plan and do, plan and do. And that's where they get tunnel vision. And that's where they build the features nobody wants, because they're just planning and doing, planning and doing. They're not checking. They're not checking with the customers. They're not getting the feedback they need. They're not seeing what the actual results are, the value proposition, and how that changes over time with what they're doing. So that check part of the cycle is super important. And then once you check, you need to reincorporate that new feedback and that new direction and all the different changes that will happen with your product or your company or your service, and make that part of the act cycle. So you're planning, you're doing, you're checking, and you're acting by incorporating the new feedback in. And you keep doing that cycle. That cycle doesn't end. It keeps going and going and developing. And it is an iterative cycle, and that's part of life. And kind of getting the product and the value proposition to where you want it, being able to manage your time, being able to manage your company, being able to network, all that stuff's part of plan, do, check, act. So don't just do. Plan, do, check, act, make things start. And everything doesn't just fall into place. You kind of have to make it fall into place by being proactive with the whole cycle there. But yeah, I think that's that's a good place to kind of tie things together.
Heck yeah, man. Well, thank you so much for this and being so helpful to the community. You're awesome. I'll see you on Friday.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Friday.
Cool. I'll see you
On
on
Friday.
Friday. Yeah, those in the area, like, around Thousand Oaks, we do a monthly lunch. Just check it out on our website, on the LinkedIn event page. It's on there too. And yeah, Craig, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this and asking some really wonderful questions and sharing what you got going on. It's always fun. I hope it was helpful for everyone. And yeah, have fun kicking butt, and remember to take breaks and enjoy life so you can get that perspective and be a better innovator. And life is life, so don't waste it. All right.